The most valuable skill in the investing world is to be able to identify stocks early on that are going to increase significantly in value over the next few years. And to do this, I have a simple 3-step strategy that will enable you to pick the next big stocks. How's it going, guys? Ryan here and welcome back to another investing video, and today we're talking about how do you pick profitable stocks early on so that you can get the best bang for your buck. But before we get into that, guys, please remember to like this video. It helps me out so much with the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe for more investing and stock market content. And I'd love to know some of the techniques that you use down in the comments section below on how you pick profitable stocks early on before they go through their meteoric rises. So without further ado, guys, let's get straight into the video. Picking profitable stocks can be something that is very tricky to do, especially when the company is new and emerging and hasn't actually turned over a profit as of yet. The idea is to be able to get into those stocks early, accumulate as many shares as possible, and then enjoy the rewards of the share price increasing over the next few years, and potentially even reap the rewards of dividends. But how do you actually identify these stocks? And today I'm going to share with you some ways in which you can do that, and in particular we're going to focus on the peer comparison method. The peer comparison method is effectively where you take two or more companies within the same industry and compare them against one another on a like-for-like basis. And this is done through effectively using different measures in order to identify from a data perspective which organizations are overvalued, which organizations are undervalued, and which organizations are currently sitting at about the right value. And the point here is to effectively be able to look at one company that you want to invest in and say, okay, how does this company compare against the competitors within that same industry? First step of the process is to identify the industry that you're looking to invest in, and in particular the market leaders within that industry, so companies which are effectively best of breed. So if we're looking at the electric vehicles industry, for example, we typically look at companies such as Tesla. And this company would then be used effectively as our benchmark, or if we want to select a variety of companies within that space, as our benchmarks for our peer comparison as the level to be successful. The second step of the process is to identify market entrants or smaller companies within that same industry. And what we're able to do here is pick the companies which are currently valued at the lowest market capitalization and have the largest potential for growth over the next few years. So for instance, if we're looking at the EV industry once again, you may be looking at companies such as Rivian or Nikola. They are companies which aren't currently producing vehicles for commercial sale at this point in time, but they will be in the near future. And while they're not market entrants, they're smaller fish in the bowl. And that means effectively what you're doing here is being able to identify companies, if they're publicly listed, that have the potential to explode in growth. So now that we've identified some different companies to compare against each other, we can move on to the third step, the actual peer comparison of the companies. And we can take this in a lot of different ways, but effectively what you're doing in basic terms is comparing like-for-like elements of each company against each other. So on a basic level, you might compare the market cap of company A against the market cap of company B, or you may go down to a more granular level of looking at the price to earnings ratio, for instance, and using that as a comparison measure. There's lots of different ways in which you're able to compare the companies against each other. And hopefully what you do throughout this process is identify where the value actually sits, particularly within those market entrants, because what you're going to do then is be able to identify a company which has some genuine potential and also has the data to back it. As an example, I'm going to focus on the mining industry and particularly the gold sector. And effectively what we look for here is a few different key elements to compare against one another. The first is the size of the mineral within the ground. So if we're looking at gold, how many million ounces of that resource exist within the ground, within the tenement of the mining company? The next is, what is the grade? So how much of the ore are we digging up per metric ton? The next thing we then want to look at is effectively, what is it costing the company to get this out of the ground? So for instance, is the ore really deep and a large amount of capital expenditure is required in order to get to that ore before we're able to get it out and sell it? Or is it near surface and we're able to get it out with just using a shovel, something as simple as that? And effectively what we want to do is then compare each company against each other. So for instance, you may have a market leading company which has a mine, and that mine contains 5 million ounces of gold, but you've got to dig 150 meters down into the ground in order to get to that ore. And let's say, for example, this company is worth $300 million. Then what you find is you've got a new entrant into this market, and it is a small gold company, and they're only valued at $50 million, for instance. And let's say they find 4 million ounces of gold in the ground, but instead of it being 150 meters deep, it's only 25 meters down. And effectively what this means is this company, which is valued only at $50 million, is able to get to that gold a lot cheaper and a lot quicker and start turning over a profit effectively in a smaller portion of the same period of time. So when we then look at this smaller company, we go, okay, well, yes, they have a slightly smaller resource by 1 million ounces. So the big company has 5 million ounces, this company has 4 million ounces. Fair enough. But if it's only taking us 25 meters to get to that ore instead of 150 meters, what is the amount of money we're going to be able to save in order to get to this ore and get it out of the ground? And the cost saving would be quite significant. And what we do here is we then look at the company, and obviously we're looking at lots of other different elements involved as well. But more than likely, this $50 million company is significantly undervalued compared to its peer, which is worth $300 million. And what you might find is that this company is worth potentially even more than that $300 million company. There is the possibility for that to be the case, depending on a lot of other factors. But that effectively means you've identified a company which is small and which has massive growth potential. And you can see if you invested in a company like that, when it is only worth $50 million, the price of the shares is going to be explosive when it starts to grow. Now that's only one example, but you can effectively apply this sort of logical thinking to any industry, and every industry is obviously going to vary on its different factors, but effectively all you're doing is comparing company A against company B against company C and identifying which one has the highest growth potential and potentially the best longevity if you're investing long term. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap up today's video. I hope you did enjoy it, and if you did, remember to leave a like. It helps me out so much and I appreciate it. And subscribe for more investing and stock market content. I'd love to know some of the techniques that you use down below when it comes to peer comparison for identifying undervalued companies. And with that, guys, I hope you have an awesome day. I'll see you next time. Cheers.